Hello, welcome to Confessions of a Frustrated Game Master. I am Robert, the narrator, and thank you for joining me for another driving episode of Confessions of a Frustrated Game Master. This episode, I want to talk about a topic that kind of came to mind because of discussions that we've been having on some of the Facebook communities, role-playing game communities that I'm a part of. Right now, the discussion centers around player engagement, how to get players to step up and play the game and be motivated and be engaged, and whether or not that can be assisted. Let's decline that call. Okay. I hope that wasn't too loud for whoever is watching this video. I just had a call come in. But anyway, yeah, so, and whether or not the players coming to the table with fully fleshed out characters can assist with that, or if that would harm the effort, so on and so forth. So the topic that made me think about was the topic of player conflict. Yeah, you know, if you come to the table with a character that doesn't really fit in, it can cause player and or character conflict, and whether or not that can be good or bad. Well, normally you would think that it would be bad to have character conflict. It's definitely bad to have player conflict. I guess that can go without being said. But as I've said in the past, I am kind of an actor role player, which means that I'm the type of player that likes to speak in my character's voice. I like to approach the game like my character is a real individual in the setting that we are playing in. I like to make decisions based on what my character would do, based on his motivations, beliefs, and goals, and based off of being a person living in this setting. So that's what that means. And on top, so I want to respond to things that in a way in which my character would respond to them. And I wish that I was in a game with players who did the same. And I love the idea of characters exploring their motivations, even if those motivations conflict with other characters in the game. And I wish that in game those differences could be role played and discussed, and the outcomes of those discussions would be realistic. Now, I have had situations where there was PvP in my game, and these were the days before I did a lot of delving into game theory and best practices and social contracts and so forth. So essentially what was happening at my table is I had players who didn't want player or didn't want character conflict in the game, and players who didn't mind having character conflict, and at sometimes even actively plotted against other characters in the game. And because I was not aware of best practices and social contracts and session zero and cultures of play and all this other stuff, I just let it roll, and feelings were hurt. But of course, these days I know that if you are going to play a game that has character conflict, that's something that has to be discussed as part of your session zero. What are we playing? What system are we playing? What style are we playing in? That has to be discussed ahead of time, and you have to have adults at the table that won't allow their feelings as a player to bleed into the feelings that their character may have, and vice versa, so that no player is upset if their character is upset. So you have to have adults at the table if you're going to have character conflict in game. And then you also have to discuss the idea of how can we keep character conflict from being contrived. Because if you are exploring character motivations and allowing characters to butt heads over their beliefs and motivations and goals, it's kind of pointless if you're going to metagame the outcomes. It's like, well, how much conflict can we come in? You know, we're all here trying to play this game. I like my character or don't like my character. My fellow player likes his character or doesn't like his character. So how can we handle these conflicts like they're handled in the real world, where if you don't like somebody, some individuals will use violence against people they don't like. Or if you don't like someone in the real world, you will leave that person alone for periods of time or forever. So what does that mean? So if you are going to open your game up to player conflict, does that mean that PC on PC violence is accepted? Or when it gets to a point where the motivations of the characters are not in line, will a player say, my character is leaving because that's what realistically would occur, and I would make another character and not having hurt feelings? So those are the incredibly difficult, at least in the culture of play that I currently play in, to do. That's really not something that is on the table. And I've always found it really difficult to get over the hump of making character conflict in the game realistic and not metagamed, because we all feel like, well, we have to be one big happy group. Are we prepared to have players splinter off and split the party and use the correct mechanics to make the game still exciting and fun if the party is going to split? Are we going to do PC versus PC violence? So having, in my mind, opening up your game to the possibility of player versus player if motivations are not matching is empty if those clashes of motivations or goals are not going to be realistically handled. So that is something that I have always lamented. I love the idea of character studies and studies of character motivation and beliefs, but those goals are really empty if they're not going to be realistically portrayed with all of the bad things that can come with them. And obviously, I think a lot of players out there take a lot of steps to make sure that when they are coming to the table, they are coming to the table with a character that will promote group cohesion, and making some players want to make sure that when they come to the table, they either fit in so that you don't have those concerns, or they hold off on nailing down their characters' backgrounds and motivations and beliefs until the group has has really settled in so that they don't cause any friction. But I love the idea of character studies and motivations and beliefs. And can you have an ongoing campaign where that is allowed? I guess you can, but again, you have to have players who are really, really adult. And I have seen so many times, even playing in games where I have never played in a game where character versus character conflict was promoted and we talked about it ahead of time. Even in games where the idea is we're all in the same gang, we're all in the same game, we're going to try to be as cohesive as possible. I have seen people's feelings get hurt because their character wasn't happy, and they allowed their character's feelings to bleed into their feelings as a player, and vice versa. Even in games where the idea was, no, we're not going to do player versus player conflict. So the idea that players who get upset when their toes get stepped on in games where you're supposed to be cohesive, wrapping my head around the idea that those players could play a game where the idea is we're not necessarily aiming for cohesion. We're aiming for playing our characters as realistically as possible could fly. So that's all I wanted to say. So what do you think? Have you played in games where player versus player conflict just happened and it ruined your game, or it didn't ruin your game? Or have you ever played a game where you said, hey guys, we are going to realistically portray our characters, and if our characters aren't on the same page, we're going to realistically deal with that, even if it comes to character versus character violence? And did that ruin your game, or what was that experience like? Because I long for the opportunity to play in that type of game, but I think that I probably will never have the opportunity. So what do you think? Thanks for checking out this episode of Confessions of a Frustrated Game Master. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, whenever and wherever you are watching this video. See ya.